Of course, probably our generation now will think of those few films like Empire Records.
Welcome to the Video Store Geek Podcast, where your friendly neighborhood world film geek Albert Valentine talks about films made and released during the golden age of the VHS era.
Hey everyone, it's your friendly neighborhood world film geek Albert Valentine. Welcome to the latest episode of the Video Store Geek Podcast, the podcast where I talk about older movies released or made during the home video era of the 1970s to the early noughts. Today we're talking about 1977's Record City, directed by Dennis Steinmetz and featuring an ensemble cast. Now, this is one of those films that take place all within the span of a day. You had films at the time like Car Wash. Later on, we had films like High Fidelity, Empire Records, Clerks. Of course, probably our generation now will think of those few films like Empire Records and Clerks. So my generation, I come from the 80s, comes from watching movies like Car Wash and Record City. I had only seen Record City just a few months ago for the first time. I hadn't really heard of it, but when I read the synopsis, it really intrigued me. So I'm like, all right, it's all set within a record store, and there is a talent contest coming up. But then you have all these little side stories that are all connecting to the day in the life of this record store in Los Angeles. So we're just going to get right into the film and give you some interesting trivia about this film because there was one piece of trivia in this that I found kind of really groundbreaking. So we're just going to get right into the movie. Record City is a store in Los Angeles. There's a bunch of people working there. You have all these different types of characters. So let's start with the manager, Eddie, played by Michael Callan. He likes to think of himself as a playboy. He likes to score with various women, and he has this one theme song music that he likes to play when he's getting his groove on. And what happens is you have three people. You have Danny, the hapless young man who is pining for a new girl, Lorraine, and he's played by the late Dennis Bowen. Then you have Stuart Getz, who's the store's accountant. He's kind of dressed like a nerd, and he's into taxes and finance and all that. And then you have the Wiz, who's kind of like the groovy guy at the store. He's played by the awesome Ted Lang, as you know from Isaac as from the Love Boat. So Rupert finds this tape of Eddie's little theme music, and the Wiz decides to play it over the PA for everyone to hear, and he starts flipping out. And sadly, this attracts the attention of Eddie's so-called girlfriend, a woman who works at this Asian nail salon across the street. And she goes off on like, Eddie, you promised you wouldn't do this. And, meanwhile, Eddie's denying everything. But at the same time, Eddie is trying to get his latest conquest in the form of the new girl, Lorraine, played by Wendy Shaw. And the thing is, Danny has this massive crush on her. For those of you who've seen Empire Records, Danny and Lorraine will remind you of Corey and AJ, Liv Tyler and Johnny Whitworth's characters. It's kind of like this little love story going on, but it's also kind of inspired because, in terms of Empire Records possibly being this, because in Empire Records, Corey has this crush on Rex Manning, who is coming to the store for the day. Well, there's this big talent contest coming up, hosted by Gordon Kong, played by the Rick Dees, who had a hit with Disco Duck at the time. So he has this big contest. All these people are appearing in it as themselves, including Gallagher, Kenny St. James, who provides this film's theme song, and as well as Kinky Friedman, who's this like big country western star in Texas at the time. Well, Lorraine has this little crush on Kinky Friedman. So that kind of throws a wrench into Danny's plans, aside from Eddie trying to score with her. So then there's these other stories and characters that go on. They include Ed Begley Jr.'s character of Pokey, who is this low-level employee, and he's planning to rob the store. But his attempts always falter, especially with his accomplice. And then you have Maria Grimm's Rita, who's the Spitfire cashier girl who tell it like it is. And then you have these bickering couple in the forms of Marty and Vivian. Marty is like a surfer type dude, and he's played by a young Tim Thomerson, who later gained fame as Jack Death in the Trancers franchise, as well as some other appearing in a lot of stuff in the 80s and 90s, including like Who's Harry Crumb, The Incredible Hulk Returns, stuff like that. And Vivian's played by Deborah White. So you have that going on. And then there's also this really interesting side story where there's been reports of a mysterious robber who changes disguises. It was known as the Chameleon. Eddie gets wind of this. He's afraid that Record City's going to be the next stop of this chameleon's robbing spree. So he hires this buffoonish security guard played by Sorrel Brook, who we did talk about a while back with Devil Times 5. But he, of course, he's the iconic Boss Hogg in the Dukes of Hazzard TV series. So you have all this stuff going on. You have all these various characters. Oh, and I should also mention there's this Russian cleaning lady that works there named Olga, and she kind of like hits on Danny now and again. She's played by the late great Ruth Buzzy, excuse me, and she's quite funny in this role. But you have all these characters that come in, these customers, and two of the funniest include a blind man played by voice actor extraordinaire Alan Oppenheimer, who's of course going to be more immortalized as Skeletor in the He-Man cartoon series. Then you have Larry Storch from F Troop playing a deaf man who's looking for a Beethoven record. And then there's a scene with him later on with Pokey's accomplice that's just really freaking hilarious. Now you gotta remember this movie's rated PG, but I'm not gonna lie to you, there are a lot of sexual innuendos in this movie. And for a PG film of 1977, that's kind of like that sounds a little crazy, you know. And then there's a quick side plot of a pimp named Macho who is trying to get into the talent contest as well. And then when he gets to the record store, um, he gets his record, and then all of a sudden these two skateboarding punks try to mess with him. Leads to this insane car chase, and this is like 5 minutes into the movie, between 5 and 10 minutes into the beginning of the movie, and all hell just breaks loose. And then you have this stereotypical LGBTQ character who Eddie's always like berating any chance he gets. He's telling him to leave. He doesn't like people like him and stuff like that. So he hatches a plan of revenge against Eddie. And there's also a story with Eddie. Eddie gets, and he's the manager, and he's like I'm going to say the anti Joe. When I say Joe from Empire Records, because Joe, he gets pissed off and everything, but he still sticks to his guns, and he believes in the store. But Eddie just gets into so much freaking trouble in this movie because apparently he owes money to a loan shark as well. And when the loan shark tells him, if you don't give me my money, I'm sending my best guy over. And the best guy's name is Gucci, played by James Bond villain icon Harold Sakata. You might know him as Oddjob. But all this, it seems like a lot goes on. And in some ways it does. Now, here's what's interesting though. When you watch the opening credits of this movie, it feels like you're watching a sitcom, a 70s sitcom. And that's with good reason, because the producer on this film is James T. Aubrey, who was an executive at CBS Television. I think he was actually like the head of CBS Television around the 50s or 60s. It might be the late 50s, early 60s. I read about him in a book about CBS. Um, and he produced this movie. And when you see this movie, like when you see the intro, it feels like you're watching these side stories as episodes of a sitcom, but they all come together as one feature film with the talent contest as like the kind of like the connector between everything besides the whole thing inside of a record store. But it feels like like I think that's why there's so much going on with this movie because you feel like you're watching like all these episodes of a sitcom merged into one whole package that lasts about an hour and a half. And that's I know people might say, "Oh, that's too much. I don't think I can take that." Well, I for some reason, once I got into the movie, I was getting into it. But I think what happened was American International tried to um follow the car wash formula. But what car wash did though was they focused on a certain group, like just the staff, and kept it within the film with just a few customers here and there. This one, you got customers and employees and the talent contest and the robber and the everything. It's just like it might be too much for some people. Me personally, I kind of liked it, and I think it could have done without a few things here and there. To be honest with you, the talent contest was fine. I get that because that was the whole point of the film. A lot, some of the side stories though, they could have just like they could have eliminated now and again. That's how I totally feel about this. But let's get into some trivia about this because there's this one piece of trivia that I just found out recently about it. I was quite amazed by it. As someone who loves watching these old films and seeing how films are made, these films are made. This one just blew my mind. So when it comes to films, um, a lot of it during this time was shot on like 16 millimeter, eight, sometimes Super 8 or 35 millimeter film. What James T. Aubrey did for this film was something that's considered somewhat revolutionary, and it could be like you could say it could have been like the basis for what happened in the 80s. He shot this film on videotape. And that's what's interesting. He wanted to do something different. He made this film out of a videotape. So he shot the film on video. And instead of doing 3 months of post-production, he only had to spend a couple weeks to prepare the videotape master and the film negative. That's all it took, just a couple of weeks, because he was hoping to release the film in the summer of '77. So unfortunately, though, American International, who became the distributors, they made it into a fall release. They released it in 1977. So what they did was they transferred the videotape to 35 millimeter print for the theatrical release. And it was released on November 4th, 1977 in Chicago, Illinois. That's where the very first showings of this movie were held. But um that was like that's like the big trivia for this movie, that this was like one of the first films to be shot on videotape rather than film. And it's because he knew the format. James Aubrey knew the format, and it just it just felt like, and if you watch it, you do like as I said before, it feels like you're watching episodes of like a sitcom that's set in a record store, but all mixed into one 90-minute movie. It's like you could have made an episode out of the Chameleon, the bit. You could have made an episode out of the attempted robbery from Pokey and the guys. You could have made an attempted, you know, you kind of take a couple episodes focusing on Danny and Lorraine, a couple episodes on Eddie and his relationship, stuff like that. You could have made this into like maybe a one season series, but ultimately it's a film. It's a feature film. But as I mentioned, those if you liked movies like Car Wash, High Fidelity, Clerks, Empire Records, these films that were shot, that are set in like the course of one day, most likely you might like it. Um, but it might be too much content for you to handle. As for me, I enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed Record City. If this for me was definitely the precursor of Empire Records and High Fidelity, especially, those two films. Um, the cast helped make the film what it was. And I think that's why it's slightly above at like how I felt. It wasn't just like your typical, you know, film. I think the cast was what made the film what it was, and it's a fun film to watch. So, with that said, I'm going to give this a B, a solid B, for sure. Had they cut a few things here and there, I probably would have lifted that up to maybe a B plus or an A minus. But for what they did and the fact that they revolutionized shooting on video, like something a lot of local filmmakers did in the 1980s, especially with the shot on video cinema. This was kind of revolutionary for its time. So yeah, I'm gonna give this a B for sure. But if you want to know where I saw this movie, you can take a wild guess. It's my favorite, one of my favorite streaming platforms today. It is Tubi. You can check this movie out on Tubi. So please do yourself a favor and check it out. If you could find this on DVD, Blu-ray, or I don't even know if there's a VHS release. If there is, I'd gladly be add this to my collection. Because I had a lot of fun watching it. And you know me, I love physical media. So please support that. Don't just focus on streaming. Please focus on, this is why I do this podcast. It's to help promote, not just promote the film itself. Yes, I did see this on streaming, but I would love to have a physical copy of this, a physical media copy. So definitely check out Record City. It's definitely worth it if you love these type of films. So that's it for this episode. Please join me on December 15th, where I'm going to talk about the 1990 formerly lost slasher film Arbor Day, just in time because a week after, on the 22nd, will mark the 35th anniversary of the film's initial release. So we will talk about Arbor Day on the next episode of the Video Store Geek Podcast. And then on the 29th, we're wrapping up the year with the iconic 1981, animated anthology Heavy Metal. And then we're going to start over in January. But check out worldfilmgeek.com for the latest in news, reviews, interviews. Check out the World Film Geek YouTube channel for for video interviews as well. Don't forget December 15th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We have the World Film Geek Awards for 2025. I will say as of today, the video is officially done. It's ready to go. It's uploaded and will be scheduled to begin at 8 p.m. on December 15th. I will be there for the live chat, so please join me for that. And until then, as always, stay awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Video Store Geek Podcast. Don't forget to check out worldfilmgeek.com for the latest reviews, interviews, and news in the world of indie and global cinema. And see you on the next episode of the podcast. Stay awesome, film geeks.